How many games in your life do you feel have helped to form you as a person? Like, how many games, when you really think about it, have gotten to that, like, center, that rich creaminess that we all have deep down? I play a lot of good games. I'm uploading videos to the YubaTubes every day for you guys of games that I play that are good. So that's not what I mean. And I don't mean, like, how many games in an identity politics sort of sense, like a sense of community, like a fandom, the way people connect to Pokemon or Undertale. What I mean is, how many games are personal to you that you've connected with in ways that can be hard to articulate? I'm going to try over the course of this series to articulate why I have that connection to The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And because this is a very 90s game, we're going to go ahead and give ourselves a very 90s name. And if you don't get the reference, just means that you're not a 90s kid. Nothing against you, but let's jump in here. So, Ocarina of Time, if you forced me into the corner and you really made me pick the best video game I've ever played, it would have to be Ocarina of Time. I know I've said that about Super Metroid, and I know I've said that about Final Fantasy, and I know I've said that about Portal, and those are all wonderful games, but Ocarina of Time is more than those games are. So, let's start here. It's a good game. It was a good game when it came out in 1998. It's a good game today. I played it recently on stream as kind of a detox coming off of Breath of the Wild, and it held up. Every second of gameplay held up just fine. I don't have any complaints about this 3D action-adventure game that came out in 1998 that I would not also levy against modern action-adventure games like, oh, my lock-on didn't work, and how come this camera sucks? Like, that's stuff you could say about Ocarina of Time, but that's stuff I say about every game that I play. Every 3D game still has those issues, and that kind of brings me to my second point. What Nintendo did from a sense of innovation, like inventing the 3D action-adventure genre. This wasn't the first 3D action-adventure game out there, obviously. Even staying inside of Nintendo, I mean, Mario 64 beat it by a couple of years, but this was the first one that, like, really got everything right. This was the first one that Nintendo really approached from a standpoint of elegance. What kind of control scheme will work for this game? What kind of camera will work for this game? What is our range of action? And how are we going to communicate that to the player in a seamless way that they don't even have to think about? Nintendo solved a lot of those problems with this game, and they did it so effortlessly that people don't even recognize it nowadays. You can see this because people will stack Ocarina of Time up against other modern, I say modern, we're going back 10, 15 years now, but quote-unquote modern Zelda games like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and the one on Wii that I didn't play but I hear sucks. And they'll stack Ocarina up against those games. And that's a fair comparison to make. You can compare a game to its sequels, and that's fine. But it's not like comparing Metroid to Super Metroid. It's not like comparing Pokemon Red to Pokemon... what's the new one? Chipotle Ranch or something, but when Super Metroid came out, it did a lot of innovations in the 2D platformer genre, okay? It streamlined a lot of things that other developers had played with. It took the Metroid formula, put it into a pot, boiled it down to just what works, and then built on it. But Super Metroid, for as much as I love it, did not completely reinvent its genre. And Ocarina of Time did. there are 17,000 Zelda games out now. This was the 5th one. When this game came out in 1998, there were 4 Zelda games. They were all 2D, and the Zelda formula had only just been kind of finalized. Like, we started with Zelda 1, which in itself was a pretty innovative game, but not to the point of, like, inventing its genre. Like, there were plenty of adventure games before Zelda 1. And there were plenty of adventure games that used Zelda 1 as a branching off point, and then kind of did their own thing. Zelda 2 came out, and it innovated in the sense that it iterated on the Zelda 1 design. Now we've got side-on dungeons, we've got this world map, we've got kind of these RPG elements and stuff. They're playing around with what the Zelda formula could be. And I love Zelda 2. But I'm happy that eventually they went back to, with Zelda 3, A Link to the Past, they went back to the top-down. They, like I said with Super Metroid, they boiled down the original formula. They said, what about this really works? And then, how can we build on it? Well, they built on it by really increasing Link's range of action. They gave him lots more items. They really ramped up the story and the setting. They made the game a little bit more linear, so there was a more definite sense of progression, which I think really worked in Link to the Past. So now we have the formula down pat. I need to get some rupees, is why I'm just kind of wandering around here. So now we kind of have the formula down pat. Well, what's the next step after that? With Link's Awakening, what can we do on the Game Boy? And they kept the basic formula, but they iterated it on a little bit. What if we let the player use two items at once instead of force them to use a sword? What if we really codify like the puzzle design and these puzzle elements that we introduced in Link to the Past? I don't want to talk to you. I just want to rob your coin. That's all I wanted. But then Ocarina of Time is here, and none of that stuff's going to fly anymore. We're going to go to 3D. We can't just translate what we had directly into 3D. We've got to take everything back to the drawing board. We've got to have a camera now. We've got to have this... I need 40 rupees. We just do this one more time. That's fine. Oh, maybe there's rupees back behind this house. That's possible. We've got to have a camera now. If we're going to have multi-floor dungeons, we've got to have... Oh, I guess there wasn't a rupee behind that house. We've got to have a sense of verticality in dungeons that wasn't possible in 2D. Link to the Past kind of faked it by having holes in the floor that you drop through to the floor below. But now we've got to have real 3D space. Oh, there's one up here that I could grab. I guess we'll grab it now. Why not? I should have grabbed it a minute ago. A lot of what the 3D adventure landscape looked like in 1998 wasn't working and has not been iterated upon since. Because, I mean, looking at this game's contemporaries, things like Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, any game with tank controls, basically, to start with, you can tell that kind of stuff wasn't working. It's considered kind of quaint and archaic by today's standards. If I were to describe to you a game that has tank controls, you're like, oh, that's such an early PlayStation kind of thing. And you'd be right. Other conventions of the time in 3D action adventure games, like controlling the camera with the R and L buttons to spin them clockwise and counterclockwise. I have a dozen PlayStation games on my shelf that work the camera like that. That's not going to work in this game, okay? It's cumbersome. Players don't really like it. And at the time, we didn't have a right control stick either. They had the C buttons, which is what they used for Mario 64, but again, kind of clunky to control this camera to just a few certain points around your character, and then in the background try to have the camera also follow you automatically. Mario 64 has a layer of jank there that did not get iterated upon. Link to the Past didn't have to worry about these things when it came out. All it had to worry about is let's iterate on Legend of Zelda, and that's it. Ocarina of Time had to completely reinvent itself. And some of the conventions that they came up with, some of the elegant solutions to these problems, we don't have camera controls. We've got a snap behind button. In a game where you're not double jumping all over the place, that's great. That's all you need. It's a lock-on button and it swings the camera in place behind you. Instead of having a lot of different buttons for confusing range of action, you've got just this one context-sensitive button. Most of the time it says attack. Sometimes it doesn't. It's going to say push, grab, enter. It's going to... that button depends on what you're doing in the world. That was Nintendo. That's their elegant solution to, well, a range of action that works in A Link to the Past isn't going to work in 3D. We need to go bigger than that. What can we do? They figured that out. Nowadays, every 3D action adventure game you play has these conventions. Everybody was trying to figure out how to make a game like this. Nintendo's the one that figured it out. And other developers iterated upon what Nintendo did. So, when people compare this game to later Zelda games that came out, to Wind Princess and Twilight Waker and whatever, I think a lot of times what gets lost in the conversation is people forget that those games were built on the shoulder of the giant that stands atop the mountain that is Ocarina of Time. So, from that standpoint, I feel like this is kind of one of the most important games ever made. Ever made. Because every game we play now is a 3D action adventure game. Whether you're talking about like the modern Metal Gear Solids, or you're talking about the Ubisoft Sandbox, the newest one of which is, I think, Far Cry vs. Rednecks is what it's called. But yeah, all of these games, their design document starts with Ocarina of Time. So it's a good game, and it's an important game in ways that other good games that I enjoy, like Portal and Super Metroid and Mario 64, aren't important. I'm not talking about my gameplay much because I really want to hammer this point home, like kind of instill why this is such an important game to me. But we're in a tree and I found a slingshot and I'm shooting spiders. I mean, from the context of the video, hopefully you've picked that up. So, Ocarina of Time is a good game, and it's an important game. And I was 16 when this game came out. This game came out at just the perfect time for me to to need a game like this in my life. Like, it really, really did. So when this game came out, I called my boss at work. I mean, first of all, this game came out. I was 16. I was in high school. I bought it with paycheck from my first job. And I didn't get up fast enough. Woo! I anticipated this game for a long time. The day it came out, I was like, I called my boss. I'm like, I can't come in today. You know, so-and-so's going to go in and work for me instead today. And she's like, are you sick or did Zelda come out? I mean, yeah, Zelda came out. So, a lot of what did I miss the map? Goodness gracious me, I missed the map. We gotta get the map. I gotta go back and get the map in the Deku Tree. You don't get the compass before the map, Brickroad. You're breaking the rules. So yeah, a lot of my thoughts on Ocarina of Time, you can write a lot of it off as nostalgia, because I was 16, this was the perfect game for the perfect time when I was a teenager, and you can only be that age once, you know? You can only be that impressionable age once in your life, and that's it. That's a golden period that ends, and then you become an old, cynical 36-year-old like I am now. So, to some extent, this game is always going to have that just magical element. Yeah, I just missed my map. Is it in... here. I'd hit my map button to check and see, but I don't have the map. No, this was just my slingshot, right? Yeah, that's all this was. It says there's another treasure box in here, though. Oh, because there's another ledge up there I didn't climb to. It's not the map, but I want to see what it is. Ocarina is going to have that magical sense that other games don't have. I bought Twilight Princess when it came out, and I just wasn't going to play Twilight Princess, and even if I ended up enjoying that game, which I didn't, and we'll get to why throughout this series, I'm sure. We'll have plenty of time to talk about every other Zelda game that's ever come out, and how none of them stack up to Ocarina, but even if I ended up enjoying Twilight Princess, it still wouldn't have been the same. There's an element of magic that's not there after you grow up. There's not a door at the bottom floor. How did I get lost in the Great Deku Tree? I did get my map. I did pick up the map. Oh, okay. So there's a little, like, nougat underneath my rupee counter there that is empty, and for some reason I was thinking my map would show up there. That's for keys. There's no keys in this dungeon, so that's just going to stay empty for a minute. So I just ran us around this dungeon for no reason. Oh, why are you still alive? Let's get past you. Okay, we got past him. So it's really the combination of those three things. Number one, it's a good game. Number two, it's a really important game. And number three, I was 16. When you combine all those things together, yes, I would have to say Ocarina is very likely to be the best video game I've ever played. So I want to talk a little bit about why it's the best Zelda. To this day, it's the best Zelda game. You know how a lot of times you go back to an old game that you haven't played in a while and it's not as good as you remember it? I've never had that sense with Ocarina. You could just barely grab that. Otherwise, you got to come back much later. For years, when I played this game, getting these little skull guys, instead of just grabbing that one, I would come back later with the boomerang and grab him his little skull that he leaves behind with the boomerang. This guy, we're not going to have that problem. So we just climb the wall. Don't worry, I'm not doing the hundo. We're not going to hunt down all of the Skulltulas in this game. But we do need to get a couple of important items. I think if we get 20 over the course of the game, that'll be plenty. So, here's what happened. Last year I played The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And I didn't hate it. Okay, you're gonna talk. You could talk to some of my viewers. They'll tell you that yeah, Brick hates. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate Breath of the Wild, but I hated lots of it. If that makes sense. There's a lot of parts of that game I really didn't like. 2, 3, 1. 23 is number 1. Remember that. That's our clue for this dungeon. And the whole time I was streaming Breath of the Wild and I was complaining about it. I kept saying things like, this wouldn't be a problem in Ocarina, or like, this is something Ocarina solved 500 years ago, how come they screwed it up with this? And I was thinking, even when I was saying it, I was thinking to myself, Brickroad, you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is, okay? You're going to have to stream Ocarina now. You're going to have to play it, and you might have to eat some crow if the game turns out to be... Oh, my platform's way on the far side. We gotta wait for it to come back. I think this is a generous timer. Like, I think we'll have plenty of time to get all the way back. At least I hope we will. Yeah, we're fine. But yeah, I was like, we're gonna have to play Ocarina, and I'm gonna have to really give it an honest appraisal. I'm gonna have to look at it with 2017 eyes. Because this was last year. This was... You know how the year changes and the number goes up? This was before that happened. But I played Ocarina. I streamed it. And my honest appraisal of it is, yep, it's still the best. Nothing in this game annoyed me when I streamed it. And the things that did annoy me, like I said, are just annoyances you put up with every 3D game. When I streamed it, I didn't have this recording set up for the 2DS yet, so I actually streamed. I played on emulator, which with N64 games is not ideal. But yeah, I played it on emulator, and I want to get more sticks. The way we get sticks is we hit him once, he gets all erect, we kill him while he's erect, and he drops a stick. And that's just wonderful. This room has a door we can't blow up yet because bombs aren't a thing for a while. So if you want to get the Honda, you've got to come back to this dungeon later with bombs in order to blow up a wall and get one of the little Skullamans. So we're going to get enough Skullamans to get the important things I want to get, but not so many that... Not so many that it's going to get tedious. I'm going to try to streamline my playthrough if I can. Is that what I want? Yeah, that's what I want. But yeah, I streamed it. I streamed the N64 version, and it held up. Every bit of it. The things that... the little minor annoyances in the game are things that are little minor annoyances in every 3D game.
Shoutouts to Douglas Hopkins, who sponsored this video, and to everybody who makes my channel possible by supporting me on Patreon.